Welcome again, everybody, to Gene and Roger Talk Movies. I'm Roger, here with Gene, and of course,
Eugene.
Yep.
And I'm here as
And
well.
Jamie somehow magically weaseled his way into watching this film because today we are talking about Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes.
Gene, initial thoughts of this one?
1984. I think, 84,
Yeah,
right?
so November 9th, 1984 is when it was out at the theaters.
Right. I think this movie is hopelessly locked in its time. Yeah, and it's just like turning it on and watching it. You know, they have all the iconic 80s things, for sure. But then one of the things that just hits you right at the beginning, it says in the opening credits, introducing Johnny Depp.
Right.
It's
right.
like, what? Introducing Johnny, and there he is, and he's a baby.
Yeah,
Gosh.
this was his obviously first role. That's what the introducing means in the movie credits. And
Right.
the great thing about Johnny Depp concerning this film is, what did he do years later? He was in one of the sequels for a brief cameo. And so unlike a lot of these big name actors that starred in these cheesy little horror movies, he embraced it, right? He realized that, yeah, this is the film that really set me on my path.
Right.
And now I'm Mr. Big Shot, Jack Sparrow, and all that, making
Right,
$50 million a movie. It's all back to, Wes Craven gave you a chance to show what you could do. And so, he's in it. Of course, Heather Langenkamp is in it. I do have to do a shout out to John Saxon. Those of us who know horror very well love this guy. He's in Blood Beach, Cannibal Apocalypse, but most famously probably Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee.
Right, exactly.
And
exactly.
Jamie, what were some of your initial thoughts of this? I can't believe your dad let you watch this.
I thought the first part of it and like the middle half were pretty well done, and then the ending just kind of just ruined it.
Okay, and we will get to that ending. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
But again, released November 9th, 1984. I'm going to share, I always like to share my movie-going experience with these movies. There used to be a magazine, I think there still is a magazine called Fangoria. Back in the 80s, of course, there wasn't internet or anything like that. And so you got your horror movie information from magazines like Fangoria, and every month it would come out. And they had been promoting this movie with various on-set interviews and articles and things. And here in Alaska, you didn't always get movies right away when they released, and we were very concerned that this movie would not be coming to our theater because November 9th came and went, and then we were into December, and then January of the next year, and then February, and then lo and behold, it gets released on VHS. But the same day it was released on VHS, it also played one of the theaters here for 1 week only. And so my friends and I, of course, immediately ran to the theater to see this thing, and glad I did. It was, horror movies sometimes play better in the theater because it's this communal experience, right? And so you've got this huge audience, and you're taking the ride with them, and so you're kind of, all the scares and all the things like that. So, Gene, did you see this in the theater, or did you only see it on the small screen?
I think I really have no memory of seeing it really before. The only memory I have of this movie was I remember somehow watching it before. I was probably on tape of Nancy hitting her arm on a hot pipe because she knew she was in a dream and she wanted to get out of the dream. So I remember that, but I don't remember seeing it in a theater. Or I don't really remember anything else of that movie.
Yeah, and Jamie, I'm assuming you did not see this at the theater?
No, I didn't.
And
Of course.
was last night the first time you've seen this movie?
Well, we started on Wednesday, and then we continued on Friday because
Had
and
to
we're
break
busy.
It got too late.
break it up a little bit. And so the additional interesting things about this film, Ronnie Blakely is in it playing Heather Langenkamp's mother. And Ronnie Blakely, for those of you who don't know, was Academy Award nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her role in Nashville. And so, wow, what a coup for Wes Craven to land an actress of that stature playing the mother. But again...
Nancy's mom.
Nancy's mom, yeah. And so, Jamie, I don't know how often you see horror movies or whatever. did this movie scare you at all, unsettle you?
It's a tiny bit. It was a bit spooky.
Well, Jamie, I think it did because after seeing the first half of it, you locked your door. Remember, I was getting you up for baseball, and your door was locked, but you never lock your door, and the door was locked.
Well, and that's great because
So what happened there, Jamie?
Yeah, really.
I got spooked.
Yeah, I have to say, and I think part of our discussion today, we'll talk about maybe the elements of horror and stuff. Like maybe what makes a horror movie, like what is even horror? Because watching this movie, the movies seemed to me more like a kind of like maybe a thriller or maybe like an adventure movie. But I don't know if I'd even call this horror, because it certainly has, the character who wants to commit, murder, and then he wants to kill people. And it even shows, parts of people being slashed. But I don't know, it seems just to me, maybe it's just so set in its time. It just seemed parts of it were just like really like campy, and like it didn't really, to even say that this movie was scary. I was just, no, not at all. That would kind of misconstrue it. So maybe it existed more in its time, and I'm kind of thinking what made this movie so famous is that I kind of think that what really makes great movies is just great characters, and this movie, of course, has a fantastic, great character in the bad guy. I don't know which is slipping my mind.
Fred Krueger.
Fred Krueger, yeah, thank you, and what an awesome character. And so I think that character propelled all the sequels and all the famousness of this movie, because it's all about Fred Krueger, because he was a great character, and there's a great little storyline there. And so, but as for being scary or horrific, no, this movie doesn't even reach that level.
Wow, and I would
compared
actually
to other movies.
Well, compared to other movies, of course.
And just to finish the thought, so after this movie, I just was so disappointed that this people called this horror. So I had started earlier watching Robert Edger's The Witch, like a 2015 Anya Taylor-Joy movie, which is horror. And it definitely reaches that horror elements, and I think later today we'll talk maybe about what are the elements of horror, because Robert Edger's movie The Witch definitely touches on elements of horror, whereas this movie, no, doesn't at all.
Wow, and I actually am going to disagree with you on that aspect of it. I do believe this Nightmare on Elm Street is straight up horror. The character got very famous, of course, but what happened in the sequels forward is he became less scary and more campy, a wisecracking homicidal maniac. So it became kind of fun. Oh, what elaborate dream things can Freddy Krueger now do to these kids and all this? And this one is played straight horror. He is this sadistic maniac who is tormenting these young people. I mean, how much more horror than if I go to sleep, I am going to be taken to his dream world and probably killed. So I'm now trying to stay awake, which is sapping all of my energy, right? It's an unwinnable scenario for a person. You have to sleep, and you're forcing yourself. I love how Nancy's hair goes gray, starts going gray and stuff.
I think she says that she was awake for like 7 days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, chugging coffee and no-dose pills.
And the record's 11 days.
Yeah.
Did you look that up?
Well, that's what
she said that.
They say it in the movie.
Oh, okay.
But I just think the character is so horrific because you can't win that game. I mean, obviously Nancy does figure out a way to get out of it, but just that where, I'm going to drain your energy to where you have to fall asleep. There's no way you can stop me. There's no way you can win this game. And just like we talked with Alien and The Thing about how the creature enjoyed on some level the suffering of his victims.
Right.
That's all Freddy Krueger was about, right? And just even with the razor fingers scraping them across stuff and things like that.
Right, just to scare them.
Right, and so the sequels turned the Fred Krueger into more of a pop icon as he became more fun and happy. And this movie is, no, he's not fun, he's scary. We're here to just do a straight, direct horror movie. So I absolutely think fits within the horror genre for sure.
Yeah, I just think that, like horror, it should, on some level, yeah, maybe this is kind of the beginning where we're talking about horror, but like on some level, I think the movie needs to make you as a person feel uncomfortable. Like maybe it needs to make you doubt your choices in life, or it needs to make you feel like maybe, because we all have insecurities, right? Every single person does. At some level, you have to admit that, to be honest with yourself. But horror movies, I think, prey on those insecurities, and they magnify those things that exist within all of us, and to make us feel, yeah, insecure in a way, insecure or doubting ourselves, or just to make us kind of, yeah, uncomfortable within our own skin. And I think good horror does that. And like I referred to it earlier, but yeah, Robert Eggers' The Witch, definitely does that. It makes you feel uncomfortable, about kind of like the choices you've made in life. And this movie doesn't do that at all. It just is like this creepy little character, but it just seems like it goes after the teen gags and, typical stuff like the Nancy's. It really revolves around 4 characters. I wrote them down. So it's Tina, and she dies first. Again, we're assuming that we've all seen this movie, and then Nancy, her friend, and then there are 2 boy characters. Glenn, who's Johnny Depp, and then this character named Rod. Yeah, so it's really kind of the movie revolves around those, and a little bit Nancy's mom. And so, but yeah, it's just yeah.
Well,
So,
and I think this movie is a little bit deeper than you're giving it credit for right now,
yeah,
because
maybe I'm just not seeing it.
look at the parental figures of all these teens. Why are we focused on the teens? Because for the most part, the parental figures are damaged themselves. We learn later on, of course, that the parents actually massacred the Freddy Krueger because he's a child murderer. How the other kids did not know this occurred in their town, I don't know.
Because there would be like massive newspapers on it, right?
You'd figure there would be some big news story.
Everyone in the town would know this story. Right. But yeah, it's the movies revealed that that Nancy's parents had. There was a child molester or a child killer.
No, it was just a child killer.
Yeah,
and that was Fred Krueger when he was alive, and the parents just
he
went to where he usually hid out, and they burned it down.
Yeah, because he was arrested by the police, and then there was some kind of legal technicality, and Fred Krueger got released due to a legal technicality. But the parents formed a vigilante mob. Yeah, and as Jamey, you're right. They surrounded his house, and they burned it.
Well, I think his hideout was like a weird boiler room.
Right, that's why they were using the boiler room
I think
scenes and all
he
that.
killed the kids in the boiler room, right?
And it's probably his favorite spot.
Right.
Yeah.
But they burned him, and so, but yeah, that Nancy's mom had to reveal this to Nancy, kind of as like, oh, this is what we did.
Yeah, and then she's hiding like his weird claw hand thing.
Yeah, she had saved
like
those.
The boiler.
Right.
She saved it.
Saved his trophy of her crime.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with Jamey when she showed that, and that's a typical MO of serial killers, because serial killers always kind of like try to get a trophy, like a necklace or a bracelet of their victims, and so that's how often the police or FBI will catch serial killers, is that they'll find these trophies and it links them directly to the crimes. And here it is, Nancy's mom had a trophy of her killing Freddy Krueger.
Well, and I think, and just to continue down that road, though, is the movie is a little deeper because these parents are all damaged, right? Nancy's mom is a
incredibly
horrendous alcoholic.
Yeah.
There's obviously been a divorce because the chief of police guy was obviously the dad, the husband, but there's been some breakup there. Was it because of this crime that occurred? I don't know. You look at Rod, who was identified as this drug dealing, always in trouble with the cops guy. Why is
Right.
he hanging out with my daughter Nancy? So his parents clearly were not in the picture.
Yeah, you never see them.
You're right. And then you look at Tina's parents. Where are they? Oh, they're off in Las Vegas somewhere. She's left to her own desires there in the house. She's all by herself, of
Right.
course, that thing. And then you have Johnny Depp's parents who seem to be detached. I mean, the whole
Glenn. His name was
Glenn,
Glenn,
yeah.
yeah.
And so, yeah, thanks. Of course, I'm the guy that doesn't know the names, but they're kind of detached as well. What are they doing up at 11:45 at night, telling Glenn it's time to maybe go to bed? What's the deal with them? They're completely clueless parents, and so. Was the fact that all of these parents conspired to kill this child murderer, has that affected them as well? And now the maniac is preying on it's kind of one of the, the sins of the fathers kind of deal, right? Oh, I'm going to kill your children now because you killed me. So I think there's some definite deeper statements being made by this movie than just
Sure.
random 80s horror film. So.
Although the movie it does seems a little inconclusive if Freddy Krueger is directly targeting the children of his killers. It seems like it's so, but I don't know. Maybe I missed it, but it doesn't seem like the movie really goes out of its way to mention that.
Well, we know that Nancy certainly is the
Clearly,
child of
it's
the killer,
Nancy.
yeah.
Nancy's mother was a prime person. And later on in the end of the movie, the movie reveals that maybe Nancy's mom, and I didn't actually write her name down, but Nancy's mom was maybe the leader of this vigilante gang that killed Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Freddy Krueger specifically targets Nancy's mom.
Yeah, and there is the one great line of dialogue when she's talking to her daughter saying, hey, you don't have to worry about Freddy Krueger anymore. Mommy killed him.
Yeah, but no, you definitely have to worry about Freddy.
Yeah. And so, I should also point out that Lynn Shay is in this very briefly. She plays the teacher at Nancy's school, and we all know
Right.
Lynn Shay became kind of a big-time deal in the horror genre with her appearances in Insidious and a bunch of other things. So it was
Interesting.
real nice to see her in this. But
Yeah, real briefly, since you brought that up, because there is a scene where this teacher the kids are obviously at school, and Nancy's in the classroom, and she's trying to stay awake. But the teacher, she's talking about Shakespeare, and she's talking about parts of Hamlet and then parts of Julius Caesar. And at that moment in that movie, I remember thinking, it'd be great if, this movie got just a little deeper, and they start talking about Shakespeare and how it relates maybe to horror. I was kind of hoping that would come. But then no.
no,
Nancy kind of freaks out in the classroom because she falls asleep.
I'm going back to the parents thing, but I think
Yeah.
actually the parents killing him made it worse for everybody because now he can go in the dreams.
Right, and I do like the fact that as the movie progresses, Nancy learns more about maybe how to deal with Fred Krueger in the dream world, because Freddy certainly understands the powers that he has in the dream world. He does the thing like he extends his arm, he slashes himself open, he cuts off his own fingers, all in an attempt to scare you, knowing full well that it's a dream for me, I'm going to be fine, I've got control in this world.
But what didn't make sense is that if they're in the dreams, why couldn't the kids do their own stuff as well? Like grab a grenade.
Well, and that's
Yeah, you were talking about that, Jamie. It's good.
And that's interesting you mentioned that, because we've kind of touched on the sequels and how they kind of cheapened the overall Freddy character. The only sequel that I would say is maybe worth a watch is the third one, Dream Warriors, because that is about kids that learn that, no, I've got powers in this dream too if I just imagine these powers.
Because it's dreams. You can do whatever the heck
Right,
you want.
exactly. And so that's a kind of an interesting part of that sequel, and really what sets it apart as kind of being a worthwhile sequel to watch is, the kids go in, Nancy's back in that one, and so she's kind of like, you can control this, let's go in there and get this guy, and so it's kind of cool.
Right. Yeah, I think the Jamie can relate to this, but Roger, I'm sure you've been had plenty of dreams where you realize that this is a dream. Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if we were talking about that with Jamie, but so you were saying you've never really had a dream where you
No.
knew it was a dream.
No.
Yeah, but I'll just relate some of my experiences. Like there have been plenty of times where I've been in a dream where I realize, yeah, this is a dream. I'm in a dream. And sometimes, I've been in a nightmare and I want out. And yeah, and then you have to. My experience with these dreams is that you have to force yourself pretty hard to like get out of a dream. And like my wife and roommates have told me that sometimes I'll wake up suddenly like screaming. Yeah, seriously. And that's me getting out of a dream, that I realized was a dream, and I had to kind of like crawl and force my way out of. And so this movie touches on that, so I could relate to this movie in that way, that Nancy definitely is. She realizes that she's in dreams and she has to force her way out. And it goes back to that, her burning herself on purpose, in the basement, and then the boiler room. She puts her arm purposely on a very hot pipe, and so yeah. So I could relate to the movie on that respect.
Well, and I do like that scene where she does burn herself, because then what happens, she wakes up and what's on her arm? The burn mark. And that
right.
starts laying the
But
groundwork for...
the burn mark wasn't like what it would actually look like, because it was like a small little red like dot on her arm, but in like reality it would just be a giant line.
Well, welcome to low-budget 80s horror movies.
Well, yeah,
right?
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
But I think that lays the groundwork for her starting then, because then she does kind of talk with the Glenn character, Johnny Depp's character, about some Tibetan dream thing or whatever crazy line of dialogue that was, where Johnny Depp was basically saying, well, these guys, they can control it. If you turn your back on this stuff, don't give it its power. And that's kind of continuing to set up. And I also really love the scene where she's in the dream center, sleep center, and they put her under, and then she comes out of that dream with Freddy Krueger's hat, which then
Right.
also set up that, no, you can maybe bring these things out of your dreams into the reality.
And then the mom makes a super stupid move. She says, like, I threw the hat away because it's disgusting and bad.
Well,
No evidence at all.
and I think that goes back to, though, like individual guilt, right? On some level, based on this mom's alcoholism, she holds some deep-seated guilt over the fact that even though this guy was a child murderer, I am also now kind of on his level because I murdered him, right? Even though, yeah, cool that you did that. He's an evil child murderer, but she still is carrying that guilt. And so I think the whole idea of that hat was, yeah, I don't even want to see it. I don't want to be constantly reminded of the fact that I'm a bad person. I killed someone, right?
Yeah. It's just, but yeah, again, part of the reason maybe why I don't like this movie is also just the reactions of the parents to the kids. Like, these kids they're teens, right? They're older teens, I would say. Like, they're driving, I would say 17 years old. Maybe 18, but they looked like 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so, but at the climatic scene of the movie, the Johnny Depp character, again, we're assuming you've seen it. The Johnny Depp character is sucked into the bed, and there's just this explosion of blood all over his house. But then right across the street, Nancy's in her room, and she's breaking windows. She's screaming like crazy for somebody to come help her. And the policeman just like looks at her dumbfounded, and he says, "Oh, I better go tell the chief." Instead of just doing something,
Because a teen literally just like exploded.
yeah, these are teens in peril. Like up to that time, Tina had died, Rod had died, and he died very suspiciously in jail. Yeah.
Well, it looked like he hanged himself.
Yeah, it looked like he hanged himself, right. But the movie kind of cleverly shows that Freddy actually put the blanket around his neck.
Yeah, you see an invisible force like tie it.
Right. Yeah, but then at the end, the parents are completely dismissive of the kids. That the kids can have any legitimacy or any kind of ideas or anything the kids are saying is correct or accurate. It's just the parents, including like Nancy's detective dad, is like, because Nancy tries to recruit the dad to try to help her out in her plan to kill Freddy.
Yeah, and he's
But-
like, sure, I'll help you.
But it's completely lying, because all he wants her to do is just get out of the way, just go home and go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is completely dismissive of, which I really disliked, because as a parent, you listen to your kids. You want to give them power. You want to legitimize them. You want to give them control. Because you treat them as persons, and these kids were not treated, I think, as individuals or persons in this movie. Yeah, which is kind of like a little bit irritated me.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe that was just kind of how movies were done in the 80s.
Well,
or...
and they still are, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
how many horror movies where the parents don't believe the kids, right?
Right, yeah.
That's
probably,
like every single one.
Yeah, and maybe that's just a horror genre, is that nobody believes the teenagers can't be right.
Because the teenagers are stupid teenagers.
Yeah, they're all being stupid.
Yeah, those
teenagers.
wacky teens. But I do think the mother, give her a little credit. She did take Nancy to the sleep center to try to figure out what's going on. So she did, while she wasn't believing that this whole thing was real, she was basically saying, oh, it's just the trauma of the last couple days for her. She was trying to get her some help in that one scene. And then she went back to hitting the bottle, of course. But,
Yes, yeah.
and of course, welcome to the 80s, right? They're sitting in this medical center, and what does the mom do while they're waiting for Nancy to go to sleep? Pops out a cigarette and lights it up and starts smoking.
Yes.
So welcome to the 80s when they still did that all the time.
Smoking.
Yeah. But as we're going towards the, and actually, Jamie, the scene where the Johnny Depp character Glenn gets pulled down into the bed and that geyser of blood shoots up, how do you think they filmed that scene?
They put. Wait, how are you asking how
Well,
it works?
how did that
Yeah.
blood go from the bottom of the floor there, the bed, up onto the ceiling and then flow all over the ceiling like that?
I'm
Yeah.
guessing it's just a hose and they just.
Well, Jamie, we talked about that, because Tina's death, she was the first to die.
And she was like, she was rolling around on the floor and then the ceiling. And we talked about how it could be like a rotating room. How they
Right,
did that.
exactly.
That's exactly what it was.
Exactly.
So they had a rotating set there, and the camera was mounted, and they had, some seats mounted there so the director could be on there, and they're rotating the set. And so just a neat effect. And it goes back again to welcome to CGI days where, we want this blood to rush up onto the ceiling and flow all over the place. How do we film that? And you have to come up with this unique set design to do that.
Yeah, it's probably just a hose and they probably put fake blood.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then it's just how do you make it work that way? And so they had the rotating set and things. And so
Yeah, I
that was,
think they call them gimbal. They gimbal the set. And
Yeah.
So
Oh wait, and that's what they did for the blood.
yeah, and when Glenn dies, the whole room is rotating, and so then they shoot up this hose
Or
with
they could've just
velocity
dro- or
from
the-
the top, so
or
the
wait,
water
or-
is actually going down.
Or it could have just they could have just had like a giant bucket.
right. They could have had just a giant bucket, yes.
But then when in the beginning, when Tina dies, you're right, Jamie. When she's on the wall, and then she's on the ceiling, the whole room was gimbaled and was rotating, and
They did a really good shot
They
from
did.
behind Rod's perspective where you can see Rod off to the side of the frame, and she's just in this rotating set going around the thing, and he's like, doing, holding his arm out trying to help her, but he's mounted just right stationary while that room is rotating.
Yeah.
And
So-
then I don't understand how the Rod character died. Like how did they do that with the ropes,
Oh, well, that's just a
strings?
little string there, yeah.
But one like
shooting that
under
across.
his neck, but like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so
confusing.
that was
Maybe
that was
maybe
good.
some stop motion thing or something. But
Yeah, that wasn't stop motion. You can always tell when it's stop motion, unless it was the greatest stop motion in history. The score for this movie was done by Charles Bernstein, who I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but it really reminded me a lot of Italian giallo movies with that kind of synthy sort of deal going on there, electronic stuff, reminded me a lot of those types of Italian films, as well as the music of Goblin from like Dario Argento movies. What did you guys think of the score? Did it fit with what was going on in the movie?
It did. It very much did.
Yeah, it just made me think of like 80s synthesizer music. You know, it's kind of the beginning of that era where a lot of like movies were, or a lot of bands were heavy into like, that synthesizer sound. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I just thought it kind of, again, locked that movie into that time, because certainly music today has left that, you know,
Right.
and left that somewhat permanently. And yeah, and so that movie just, like I said, it cements it into that mid 80s kind of place.
And then I also liked the little Freddy Krueger song that the little jump rope girls would sing too. That really set kind of that eerie, creepy sort of tone, kind of almost mocking, right? He's going to get you. Grab your crucifix, doesn't really matter. He's going to get you kind of thing. And it's these little girls doing that. What did you think about that?
Very, very. It was very spooky. I was very spooked.
Is that why you were locking your bedroom door?
Yes.
Yes. So this movie definitely worked for my 14-year-old. I don't know. Maybe it's my jaded age or something.
Well,
I
you
don't
know.
know.
We've been
But, yeah.
seeing a lot of these types of movies, so yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I want to go back to the fact that a lot of the people listening right now maybe have this idea of Freddy Krueger, but it's based on the sequels where he's kind of this wisecracking, fun character. Again, this
No, it's
one
not fun.
is not that. This one is, he's a scary, evil person that you don't want to be messing with. And so it was refreshing for me to watch this movie again after, well, my gosh, 30 years at least. Because
bad sequels.
I had forgotten how just straight horror. Yep, we're not playing around. There's no wisecracking Freddy, because he really became that. I mean, he was on MTV and he had, his own little TV show where he was
did?
the host. All this stupid
Really? Oh my
stuff
God.
that went
Freddy
on.
Krueger had a TV show.
Yeah, Freddy's Nightmares, I think it was called.
Oh
It was
my
like
gosh.
he would introduce it, and then it would be some little Twilight Zone type episode or something
Right.
or whatever. But he became this real pop culture kind of icon, which diluted what he really was in this first movie.
Right.
And so it was refreshing for me to see that. But as we get to the end of the film, what did you think about that, where it kind of, it did come across as these kids were the ones that were actually allowing Fred Krueger to have all of his power, right? He was living kind of off of their fear. And if they could overcome that, they could defeat him. I thought that was an interesting way to kind of wrap up that final conflict with Freddy Krueger. What did you think, Jamey?
It was very, very, very confusing at first, but now that when I think about it, it kind of makes sense a little bit.
Right, because like Gene was talking earlier, once you know you're in that nightmare, you can pull yourself out of it. And that was kind of the same deal that she did there.
And she's like, nah, I know I'm in a dream, get out, blah, blah. And then she went out.
Yeah, and I can feed into my nightmare by staying asleep and just feed into that fear. But if I pull that fear away, my nightmare goes away.
Yeah.
So wait, was the whole movie a dream then?
Well, we'll talk about
That's-
the very, very end in a second. But
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because clearly at the end, Freddy and Jamie, we were talking about this, but Freddy had left the dream world and Freddy went into the actual living world. And that's where Nancy had set up the traps for him.
And those are some
remember?
like really powerful traps.
There was a powerful traps, that would have killed a regular person.
Yeah, well, that hammer would have just probably like.
It would have destroyed a regular. Yeah.
He would have been done right there.
Yeah.
And then there was a light bulb with like
Yeah, it was a
gunpowder.
bomb. She created a bomb. Yeah. Which was pretty ingenious, I thought, for a 17-year-old. Yeah, and so, but I thought it was interesting at that point, because there was like a role reversal. Instead of the kids being injured or killed in the dream world, Freddy left the dream world and Freddy came into our world. Yeah, and so I thought it was pretty cool.
Right, and of course, we do have to shout out Welcome to the 80s once again, because every single 80s movie would always have the I'm getting ready for battle sequence, right? You have
Yeah,
the
that has
that
Rambos
music.
and all that stuff, and so here she is putting all these traps together in
Yeah,
a little
it definitely
montage there. You know?
Yeah, it definitely has that.
But the very end then,
That was kind of confusing.
right, and so
I
Freddy...
didn't like it at all.
Freddy goes
No.
away. She defeats him. She turns her back on him by take
Right.
away all the power
He
I gave to
dissolves,
you.
he
He
does-
dissolves and everything, and then she opens the door, and it's this nice bright day. And
But it's like a foggy day that,
Right.
that they said,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
doesn't make
They
any
go
sense.
they go crazy with the fog machines in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course the mom is, Nancy looks great. She's healthy looking and everything. The
and
mom,
everyone's alive.
Mom comes out. It's like, hey, I'm gonna stop drinking and all this stuff.
Yeah, she
right.
does that.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the
Yeah,
kids.
but then the Tina,
Rod and Glenn are
yeah,
alive.
they're all alive in a
and they're in
car.
And then
Yeah.
the car hood closes down, and the car hood is the color of Freddy's jacket,
Yep.
and then it locks. They drive away, and then Freddy grabs the mom through the window, pulls her through. Boom,
Right.
movie's over.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah, your point of is the whole movie a dream and she's just trapped in this dream sequence constantly? It could be, possibly. Who knows? There's multiple endings for this film because they couldn't quite figure out the best way to end it. And so there is one ending where that same exact sequence happens, but then the camera cuts to Fred Krueger is driving the car and they're all trapped in it. There's another ending where Nancy, and it was just a dream. She defeated Fred Krueger and now everything's fine. It was a dream and none of it really actually happened. She gets in the car, they drive away, the mom's like, bye, and the movie ends. And then
That would have been better.
and then the ending that we got, which has Wes Craven said, we shot a bunch of these endings and we looked at that and we just had a great laugh over that really ridiculous dummy that we ripped through that window.
Yeah, you can
And
tell
it looks
it's a dummy.
super stupid.
Yeah,
It just looked really dumb.
Yeah, and so
It's
we were
dumb.
like, no, we're just going to go with that ending.
Yeah,
and
they
so-
shouldn't. I think if you think about the ending, I think maybe because it's and Jamie brought up a great observation there is that the kids all of a sudden, Tina, Glenn, and Rod are alive. They're in a convertible, but then the convertible lid closes. Yeah, and it's
Yeah, and the
clothes
lid
of Freddy.
is the shape of his jacket.
Yeah.
right, and so clearly that is kind of a representation of reality, but it's not real. They're Tina, Glenn, and Rod really are not there because they wouldn't be driving a car like that. So I think maybe that was part of the dream.
And also the car seemed to be like from the 50s, not from the 80s.
Right. It's a
Oh,
very
yeah.
old
So
car,
because
right.
maybe Freddy was from the 50s, so maybe they're actually still in the dream world. And
Right. Yeah.
Freddy's-
Very good. Very good. Okay. Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the movie leads you to believe that there was an ultimate victory, but I think no.
Well, and welcome to horror, right? There's
Yeah.
never going to be a victory, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
well, some horror movies have victories.
right, I know.
Some. Yeah. Well. Yeah. We could touch on that.
So, Jamie, anything else we need to talk about with Nightmare on Elm Street?
I thought there would be a cool fight scene with Nancy having the claw that the mom found between Freddy and the dream. They'd have a cool fight with two glove hands or something.
Wow,
Wow,
you should
that'd
have
be
been
cool.
a screenwriter because that would have been kind of cool because there is this scene where she goes down to that basement and picks up that cloth, but the glove is gone.
Yeah.
And so that might have been a cool thing where she's like, all right, Krueger, I'm going to meet you on your own terms. And
Right. I'm gonna
go
slash
from
you with
there.
your own
Yeah.
cloth. Yeah.
I kind of like that idea. Gene, any final thoughts on Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yeah, it just again going back to what I was talking about earlier is I think horror I as in all things we're all individuals. What is good for me, maybe not be good for another person. But I think horror should be horror. It should be true to its name. Horror should be again kind of make you feel uncomfortable and maybe doubt your own decisions in your own life and things like that. And this movie doesn't do that on any level. It reminds me of a adventure movie. It's fun to watch and stuff, but as soon as it's gone,
Well, it is
credits roll, you can dismiss it. Forget about it. Whereas other movies that are what I consider more true horror, they kind of linger with you for a while, and you have to, when the movie's gone, you're still kind of contemplating it.
Well, all I know is your son locked his bedroom door.
Yeah,
so
see,
I'm
it
going to
worked.
say this
It
movie's
worked.
okay.
It worked on me. I got
It worked for
spooked.
him, yes. And maybe
very much.
that's good enough because 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds drive American movies.
There you go. And so Wes Craven, again, was the director. Big shout out to his other films, Hills Have Eyes, Last House on the Left, Scream, of course, People Under the Stairs. Just this guy knows horror and is just a master of it. And so my opinion, if you haven't seen Nightmare on Elm Street ever, or if you only remember Freddy from the sequels, certainly give this one a shot again. I was pleasantly surprised. Gene, of course, is on the other side of the fence on this one. But remember, Jamey locked his bedroom door.
Jamie
after
locked his
watching it.
bedroom door,
So
which he
it-
never
it-
does. So yes.
So
So it did work.
That's all we got for today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will catch you the next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, later.
Good word.